Tiffany, and hello to people that are currently tuning in. Welcome to our third episode of Pi 515 Super Series or CEO Super Series. My name is Daniel. I am currently a summer intern at Pi 515. I'm an up and coming senior at North High School, and this is my co-interviewer.
My name is Elif, and I'm a recent graduate of Roosevelt High School, and I am attending U Chicago this fall.
Okay.
In this super series, we will be interviewing CEOs and executives of organizations about their journey and advice they want to provide to the youth in today's world. The goal of the segment is to connect leaders in today's workforce with youth seeking guidance to have rich and engaging conversations to learn about their future of work. Today, I'm glad to introduce Tiffany Johnson, who is a founding member of Pyramid Theater Company. Just to get started, can you tell us a bit more about yourself, Tiffany?
Thank you, Daniel, and good morning, Elif, and good morning, Live. I am Tiffany Johnson. I am the producing artistic director of Pyramid Theater Company. Pyramid Theater Company was founded in 2015 by myself and 6 other colleagues. The mission at Pyramid is to provide a gateway to the arts for the Des Moines community by illuminating the presence of Black artists in the theater canon, and then to provide a means of artistic expression to emerging Black voices. We commit ourselves to the tenet of Sankofa. That is from the Akan language of Ghana. It means it is not taboo to go back and retrieve what is in danger of being left behind. We believe that the stories and telling the stories of the past will help with providing information for today and hopefully the future. I am the current producing artistic director there. I've been in that position since 2019 and have been the artistic director of Pyramid Theater Company since 2016.
For someone who isn't really that interested in theater, can you give us some driving factors or motivations that led you down the career of theater?
Of course. So art and performing arts is the study of human life. And that was the biggest motivator for me is how can I, or I'll say we, because we as colleagues kind of talked about this. We worked as artists. A lot of us worked as artists in the community prior to founding Pyramid Theater Company. But there were not any theater companies that were telling Black stories or telling stories where we were being able to lead with our experience and with our stories. And we wanted to create a platform for that in this community to be able to illuminate these artists and to be able to tell these stories, which we believe that utilizing art can be as a catalyst for social change. So literally outside of just the theater itself, the fundamentals that come around theater and performing arts were the things that I was really interested in bringing to the community, are the things that we were really interested in using art to shine a light on. So social issues, community issues, and literally being able to tell stories from a cultural perspective in a very marginalized region.
Just a side question. Sorry. Just a side question. What type of things does Pyramid Theater Company bring to the community? Like what type of, I can't pronounce what I'm trying to say. What type of connection or bond does Theater Pyramid have with the community?
I think the bond that we have, first of all, the majority of the founding members of Pyramid have invested interest in the Des Moines area. Either they were educated here, they have family here, or like myself was raised here and has been here most of my life. So already that connective tissue is already there from the community perspective. But what we brought to the table, I think that was unique, is literally shining a light on the Black experience, being able to address issues throughout the work that we do that plague our communities, or that things that we maybe need to have conversations about in a more palatable way. We also do various things with regards to education, developing artists, and performing arts is not only good for just being on stage. It literally can be utilized to be transposed into just about any environment that you're in or any industry that you're in. when it comes to public speaking, when it comes to being brave enough to stand in front of a group of people and speak or give a presentation, when it comes to understanding how humans work and operate together emotionally, when it comes to conveying your emotions properly and knowing how to process those things. Art really speaks to a lot of fundamentals of life, not necessarily just what happens on the stage, but all of these skills are transferable to life, to your life experience, to your life journey, to your classrooms, to your corporate environments, to your any environment that you go into. Performing arts is an assistant for you and a tool that you can use to be better acclimated to those areas. So we not only wanted to do enlighten, educate, and entertain, but we also wanted to empower our people in our communities to learn these transferable skills and to be able to implement and use them in our communities.
I think that's a great answer. I'm actually very interested in theater myself, and so I find that I carry the same passion for the exact same reason. I think that it's a reflection of the way we all interact with one another and just the way people interact within the world. But I also read that you view acting as a unique opportunity to ask tough questions, raise
Mhm.
awareness, and address an elephant in the room. And I was wondering, what specific issues do you feel as though you've tackled in your acting career? And if so, could you name a specific performance that really tested you emotionally, or just kind of took a toll on you?
Oh, that was a great question, Elaf. So we have addressed various issues and topics throughout theater: issues of racism, issues of slavery, issues of Black experience, colorism within the Black community. We've addressed various issues, emotional issues, marriage issues, um, orientation issues. Literally, you can find a piece of work that speaks to just about anything. And that's literally kind of how we went about choosing the work that we did each season, as we would really look at the community and be like, what kind of conversations do we need to be having? Like, what is going on around here? And what can we do artistically to address those things? And so we would literally look for a piece of work like A Raisin in the Sun or Intimate Apparel, or then we really started working with new works. There's a beautiful play called Prowess by Ike Holter. We've done a play called Buffalo Berries, Bofield Berry's Buffalo Women, which talked about the hidden figures in history. People like Biddy Mason and Stagecoach Mary, and all of these different historical figures that maybe some people didn't even have information on or know about. And these things are really empowering things for a community of people who feel disenfranchised or who don't feel like they've had adequate contribution to American history at large. Because a lot of times we try to sectorize those things and say, there's Black history, there's American history, there's all these different histories. But at the end of the day, our history is really universal. We all have existed in this life at the same time. So it's yes, we do pay attention to Black history, or we do pay attention to American history, and we do realize that there's conflicts and different details that go along with those different historical perspectives. But overall, it's our American history at large. And I think a lot of times we forget to add the cultural competency or the cultural aspect or the cultural experience to the conversation, because that's not status quo, or that's not the dominant lifestyle or experience that's lived in this world that we have. And so it's nice to be able to utilize this art in order to speak to it. A play that I had trouble with, or that took me through it, let me think about that for just 1 second. From an acting standpoint, I will say, and I'll probably bring this play up again, I will say The Amen Corner by James Baldwin was one that kind of took me through it. I played a pastor by the name of Sister Margaret.
Mhm.
And what happened with this play, or with me personally, is that I started to draw parallels or lines between how the system has kind of designed for us to dismantle our family structures, and how religion oftentimes plays a role in the dismantling of that structure as well. Um, us choosing our life experience, or what we're experiencing in our life, us choosing our religious aspects over that, and how those things sometimes conflict. And I think it was personalized to me a lot. Not that I was ever trying to be a pastor, but when I was young, I wanted to be a pastor. I thought I did anyway, because I wanted to be that person that watched over her flock of people, that really helped to cultivate the right atmosphere and environment for our community. I really, in my heart and soul, care about the human experience and people, and I wanted to be a part of that. Realized though, when I got a little older and wasn't quite as religious as I thought I was going to be as a child, that I could use theater as almost the same, with almost the same effect. You know, I didn't have to be in the pulpit. I didn't have to be super religious in order to still feel responsible to my community, feel responsible to people, and to tell stories that I thought impacted and changed things. But it made me question that playing that role made me question how heavily I hid behind my religious values, and how a lot of times I would let that interfere with my life experience, based off of what I thought was punitive or not punitive, when it came to what religion kind of spoke to. So it kind of opened my eyes in one way, in saying that asking myself how much I was hiding behind those things, and feeling convicted by relationships that I had or didn't have as a result of those things. And it was kind of because it's so closely correlated a lot of times, especially when you're telling Black stories, with your life experience. If you're a Black person, you know, it's hard not to be convicted by some of the dialogue that you find in some of those plays, because it literally is your lived experience. And if it's not, you see your mama go through it, or your grandmama going through it, or your daddy going through it, or your sisters and brothers going through it. Like, it's familiar if it's not your own experience. And sometimes that kind of pierces you in a way that is a little bit more intense than other stories that you can't find yourself in, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. I was actually going to ask you, like, if you, I don't know if the term is like method acting, and I'm actually saying that, like, you know, I'm thinking about that in the right way. But I was going to ask, like, do you feel as though with these stories that are so connected, like, to your own identity? Like, I know for myself that I often do like method act and things like that. But I was wondering if you do so as well, or how do you do your performances?
Um, I would say that I'm somewhat of a method actor, because I really dive into the backstory of the characters a lot of times, and it's hard not to be a method actor when you are telling a story that represents your own culture, because it's so easy to find yourself in it and immerse yourself in the experience that must have been had in order to create that dialogue. I do say, because I also teach students, and we talk about method acting. And you need to be responsible with that type of acting, because it is a rabbit hole of sorts method. And it can be dangerous if you're not taking good care of yourself along the way, you know, making sure that you're properly attaching and detaching to that character, so that you don't find it becoming a part of your lived experience. If you look at people historically in film, on stage, people like Heath Ledger or Michael K. Williams, these people are method actors, and they experience demise based off of diving so far into their characters. Heath Ledger, when he was playing the Joker, he literally locked himself in a hotel room for a long period of time
I
to
think I heard
really
about
immerse
that.
himself in this character. Well, it started freaking him out quite a bit, you know, so he started taking sleeping pills so that he could get some rest, and detach from the character or whatnot. And it got to the point where he was taking more and more sleeping pills, but he was so disturbed that he was still not able to get to sleep, and ended up resulting in an overdose for him. And would people say that he was a drug addict or something like that? They might, but I don't know that sometimes people don't realize what kind of an emotional toll can be taken when you take on a method acting experience, or you decide to use that method when discovering your character, because it really does put you in an emotional space. Michael K. Williams, when he did Lovecraft Country, literally reintroduced himself to a drug habit, a relapse of sorts, because of some of the tough things that he was having to portray in the filming, which again then led to his demise. So like method acting is an incredibly intense way of performing. And I would argue that it's one of the most replicative, if I said that right, methods. Like you really get in there on the character, but it also you need to be responsible with that method. You need to take good care of yourself with that method, because it can easily transpose itself or find itself in your everyday life. I don't know how many characters or people that I cast and work with that it takes them months to dismantle the character that they've taken on in a play. I will see them over and over again after the play is well over and we've struck and it's all gone. They're still saying lines from that play. They're still taking on aspects of that character, and it takes them a while to disassociate themselves from that story. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's bad, depending on what character you're portraying with that particular method. So method acting, I think, is my favorite, but it is the most dangerous, I would say.
Thank you for that. I think that's very oh, what happened to Daniel? Can you see him?
Daniel, where did you go?
I think his connection is bad.
You done logged off on
Well, as he's still coming back, so I did a program oral interpretation, which is like a one-man performance, and I actually, just to like piggyback off of what you said, I found myself method acting a mother who was kind of being ignored as she was going through like childbirth, and like every doctor she would go to and kind of express her pain, it was like it wasn't seen, it wasn't heard. And so throughout the performance, she's slowly like dying. And I found myself like really feeling that mood even after the performance, or like feeling defeated and terrible. And so I totally agree with what you're saying about method acting, that sometimes it can take you to low places. And from that, I will give you back to Daniel.
Okay, Daniel, you're back with us.
Yeah, hello. You were talking a lot about method acting, and I know there's different types of acting and all of that. I was just going to ask you, from the shift from being a method actor or a very different type of acting, how was it going into being a director? And like what challenges or how was the trajectory?
It was actually really an incredible trajectory. Like, first of all, I've always worked in the field of community. That's been my career. I've worked in nonprofit, community organizing, politics. I chaired the Black Caucus. I've done a lot of community organizing and working with groups of people in community. So I always knew that was a strong suit for me. And I would say that performance is my therapy and directing is my ministry, if I had to say it any type of way. Like, I utilize directing, and anybody that has worked with me as a director will tell you, like, I always say the play is the thing that gets us in the room together, but the things that we need to address and look at are so much bigger than this play. Because I do community theater, which is different. It's performance, it's doing performing arts, it's theater, it's all the things, but it's a community-based initiative. And so under my leadership, my ultimate goal is to try to find things that we can do within our organization that will transpose and find themselves in our communities, making our community stronger, making our conversations more authentic, creating bonds and accountability for ourselves and how we care for each other within our communities. So that's always been a big thing for me. And directing to me is about pulling together a group of people and to tell a common story. But overall, over all of that, over the whole story, is to help people find their gifts, because your gift will make room for you. And that's a promise. That is not a statement to be taken lightly. That is a promise that your gifts will make room for you. And a lot of times we don't pursue finding those gifts because we get so caught up in living life and the structure that life offers us and the things that we have to do, that we forget to pursue ourselves and what we actually came here equipped to do. You know, I was an actor when I was born. You too, Daniel and Elif, are actors every day of your lives. The whole world is a stage. And every day that you get up, you put on a character. You're different when you are in your group of friends than you are when you're with your parents, than you are when you're with your supervisors, and you are when you're in your classrooms, and you literally are acting every day without even putting any effort into it, but you're being the character of you. If somebody were to be sitting on a bench next to you and writing a story while you were living, your life would be a play, right? So this is literally the follow and study of human experience, oftentimes in first person, because when we look at people like Lorraine Hansberry or James Baldwin or August Wilson, any of these playwrights, they are writing about their lived experiences. They're not writing about historical things as much as they're writing about what they are experiencing, living in, heard, were affected by in their real lives. And so sometimes I think it's more accurate than history books. Historians write about history, playwrights live it and then write about it. You know, so there's just a very different take that you can get from it. Becoming a director gave me the opportunity to bring people in the room, not only to appreciate the richness of this historical value that can be found in this dialogue, in these scripts, in these stories, but also to empower them and encourage them to use their gifts, to find their gifts, to use their gifts, and to remind them that their gifts will make room for them. So again, performance was my own personal therapy, my way of getting rid of emotional baggage or utilizing my disposition where I'm at in order to release some of those things in a productive manner. But directing is my ministry. It's where I can not only tell these beautiful stories, but also empower, encourage, enlighten, and entertain my community and my people, and empowering them to do greater things in the community that sometimes we need that extra encouragement to take the step on doing. I've had so many people that have come through my cast that have went from criminally involved to community involved, from disenfranchised to empowered, from being scared to talk in front of people to keynote speeches. And it's all about being able to tap into your gift, believe in it, nurture it and grow it, and believe that it'll make room for you. So jumping into directing wasn't as hard as I thought it would be, because I already had a community-minded mentality, and I already had an organizational mentality when it came to organizing community and getting people to work together. It just was a different way of me being able to not use the gift for myself, but to offer it to the community for use.
Talking about so many gifts, a couple years ago, I watched this movie called Miracle from Heaven. It gave me a good message about like religion and how with enough belief anything could happen. What movie or play or show have you seen that is giving you a strong message?
This is an older movie. And I will be honest to tell you, like, I'm not the hugest movie and TV watcher. I'm way more into like dialogue scripts and being able to use my imagination to see these stories and see these things myself. So I don't a lot of times let myself sit still long enough to get into fully into movies or TV shows or whatnot. But there's a movie called The Secret Life of Bees. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard that movie, but if you haven't heard of it, you should look it up and you should watch it. There are so many incredible messages in that play. It is just so well written. It's a beautiful story about love and community, and it addresses a whole lot of issues with disabilities, with religion, with there's just a lot in that movie. I highly recommend that movie. It's kind of an older movie. I believe it was in the early 2000s at best that it came out. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But it has Queen Latifah in it. There's a lot of good people in a nice lineup in the movie. And it's an incredibly beautiful story. Like just an incredibly beautiful story. And so, Daniel, I'm going to follow up with you because I want you to watch the movie. And then I want to come back to you and be like, what'd you think of the movie, Daniel? I just want to know. Because I can guarantee you're going to say, I loved that movie. You too, Elaf.
I wrote it down. I did.
It's an incredible movie.
When talking about movies, do you feel like there's some that are underrated? And why would you say that?
That's probably not the best question for me to answer because I'm not the pro at movies. I do believe that there's a lot more value to be found in them sometimes that than we take out of them. A lot of them, like when you think about like Avatar or Wakanda or these type of movies, there is such valuable information to take from them. And I think sometimes because of the ultra realism that is offered in some of these movies that we don't fully embrace the messaging that's coming into it. We look at it for entertainment value, and sometimes we don't see the deeper meaning behind some of the dialogue that comes with it because it's so ultra realistic and so it seems like far-fetched a lot of times. But I encourage people to listen to dialogue. A lot of times, remember when you were little and you couldn't read and you would look at the books and you would make up your own story based off what the pictures was doing. Like, like you'd be, if the girl was jumping rope, you'd be like, Trudy is jumping rope. And her friend came around and decided she was going to take the jump rope and smack her with it. And you just make your own story up because you don't know the words. But when you start to rediscover dialogue and understand the putting of words together, I encourage people to really listen sometimes because there's a lot of deeper meanings that can be found. And sometimes those meanings are individual meanings. Like sometimes it's something that you were supposed to get from that directly. But other times there's just global messages that is good for us to know and listen to and apply to what we see in life. Maybe it might be an ultra realistic picture with the dialogue in the movie, but think about how that looks in reality in your community when you walk outside your door, in your neighborhood, in your city or state. Some of those messages are easily transferable and applied to those situations. And again, I say it over and over again in classrooms and everywhere else. Art is the study of human life. So all of these different mediums and disciplines of art literally speak to the world that we live in, the world that we've learned about, the world that we're accustomed to, the world we want to see. All of it is relative. And so I don't know if I could give a particular movie, but I would just say when you see those movies, especially those movies that have some kind of embellished reality that happens within them, which is a lot for entertainment value, right? But really listen to a lot of the messaging that comes and see what you can draw from that.
Okay. When watching a play or reading a book, what type of thing pops out to you the most? While I say this, I mean like characters or setting. Because for me, I usually just focus on the entertainment purpose and tend to stay away from actually focusing on the message.
So with every play, you will find that there's an intro to the play. There's a rising action. So these are all the actions that get you to the climax of the story. There's the climax, the actual whole point of the story, right? Then there's the falling action, the thing that happens as a result of that climax happening. And then there's a conclusion or a resolution, how the story ends, right? And so the thing that I always look for is the climax. A lot of times, like, what is the whole point of the story? You know, what is it that what did the playwright intend to get out of this, the value that the playwright intended to get out of the story based off of the climax, because the climax is usually the big picture. Like, everything that's done before this climax is done to get to it, and everything done after this climax is a result of it. So that is the thing. And I usually go looking for that when it comes to choosing work. Is like, okay, this story addresses colorism, and it's something that we need to talk about within our community, the light skin, dark skin, Black experience. We need to make sure that we understand that outside of Black and white issues that we have issues within our own community that we need to look at, we need to work at, we need to talk about, we need to acknowledge. And so if I feel like that's an issue in our community, I'll pick a play like I just did in the Upper Room, by Bofield Berry, that talks about the Black family experience. It doesn't deal with slavery. It doesn't deal with the Black and white experience. It deals with what happens in a Black family home when there's a whole bunch of different dynamics happening. You know, when there's the matriarchal characters, the moms, the children of those older matriarchal and patriarchal characters that are trying to be parents themselves. They have a light-skinned child, they have a dark-skinned child. They want the same things from these children, but these children are having different experiences just based off of the tone or the hue or the shade of color that they are. So light-skinned and Black people get treated oftentimes differently than dark-skinned and Black people. It goes all the way back to the house Negro and the field Negro connotations in slavery, and the angst that happens just within the Black community. Me, myself, you know, I have two daughters. I actually have three daughters, but two of my daughters, my older two daughters, one of them is very fair skinned. One of them is very brown skinned. It's like one of them took from one side of the family and one of them took from the other side of the family. And for the longest time in my mind, I had the same set of expectations for both of my daughters. And I thought that was the right thing to do, right? Like, I love you guys both the same. I expect the same thing from both of you. I want you guys both to be high achievers. I want you to both do good in school. But I never stopped to think about the experience that each of them were having based off of their own perspectives and their own life experience and their own shade of color. Whereas my darker skinned daughter didn't find herself having as a favorable experience as my lighter skinned daughter. And so is it fair for me to have the same set of expectations for them when they don't have the same life experience? And so it really taught me how to individualize the human experience. Like, everybody has their own experience in life, and it's important for me to see theirs as it is for me to want people to see mine. And so sometimes I got to come outside of myself and see things from other people's perspectives. And I think that's another thing that art gives us the opportunity to do. You know, without us being able to live the experience, we can express the experience and view the experience and show the experience, and then give the audience an opportunity to draw their conclusions, change their mindsets, see what they were doing that they don't want to do anymore, and really tasking themselves to do that work once they are able to see what the experience actually is. Because I think sometimes if we don't live the experience, we don't fully understand it. and we could say what we think from our perspective, but that's not our lived experience. Um, and so I think that taught me a lot, and from the aspect of utilizing art. And it really helped me to think about how to address work and topics and things that we deal with in the performing arts sector. But yeah, the to me, the climax is usually what I look for in the story. Just like, what's the big picture? My
And
bad. I'd be going on. I'd be going
no,
like, I'll go down a rabbit hole and I'll
no,
talk
you're
for an
good.
hour about something.
No, you're all good. I know you're talking a lot about like the story, but like I wonder, like asking on behalf of myself as a Black child, and more specifically a child of immigrants as well. I saw that you grew up in Iowa, but I also sometimes think about how specifically in the Black community, or even maybe in a state like this one, how theater, like people who love theater are viewed. And I mean, I know that the arts are embraced in some capacity when it comes to the Black community. I think that the Black community, we love dance and we love, singing and rapping and things like that. But I don't see for myself, I didn't see as much of the support when it came to acting or theater as a craft. And so, me personally, I've struggled with like finding, because I'm majoring in theater and performance studies, and I found difficulty like telling parents and telling, peers because of judgment. And I was wondering, did you ever feel as though your community has questioned your decision in your career path? And then how did you deal with your challenges you faced, as it is a more untraditional career path too?
Hmm. Well, when me and the six other colleagues started Pyramid Theater Company, we did get a little bit of pushback in the community because at that time there were, I think, 11 other theater companies that were here. Um, None of them specifically Black theater companies, none of them really focusing on Black art or Black artists. But we got pushback, like, why another theater company? Why wouldn't you just attach yourself to an already existing theater company that's here and try to, integrate telling these stories or whatever? And our response was like, why not a Black theater
Mhm.
company here? And it is okay for us to have our own things, like to have things that literally are for us and about us, and
Mhm.
not excluding any other culture from experiencing it or being a part of it, but not feeling like we have to attach ourselves to anything else in order to be the stewards of our own storytelling and being able to tell our own stories to empower our communities. And I will agree with you, Elif. It's a cultivated experience that you have to do in the Black community, because by and large, the Black community didn't feel like theater was a medium for them. And because it wasn't heavily utilized, it wasn't heavily patronized, and it quite honestly didn't exist here in this region specifically. And I think the experience is a little different based off where you may be regionally, and the importance of, or the amplification of Black art and culture. But in this particular sector, in this region, it has been something that we've had to cultivate and realize is just as much for us as anybody else. A lot of that stems from being in environments where they would go and they weren't really hearing their stories amplified. So it really didn't hit them like a story would, that they could find themselves in. But if you look historically, all the way from even before the Harlem Renaissance period of time, um, you would always find a theater in a community, a Black community. Performing arts has always been incredibly important to the Black diaspora because it was the way that we expressed ourselves. Black people are cultural people, are by and large artistic people, because that's how we communicate. And I would agree with you that most people go to those mediums like, performance by way of like music or dance or that type of thing, and think that's more of the mainstream approach. But a lot of times it's just because they haven't been exposed to and affected by the theater process. So yeah, some people probably was like, "Oh, that's cute. You're doing a theater, huh?" You know, probably thought that. But if they got a chance to talk with us, any of myself or any of my colleagues, they would realize that the art is just the thing to get us in the room. Um, and what we want to do with art is utilize it as a vehicle and a catalyst for social change, which shows up more in the community than one might think. And over the last decade, we have literally seen a shift in audiences that we have at our shows. When we first started, we had pretty much predominantly white audience. And now 2023, we can see that it's getting more to be, I would say it's now probably, if I had to give percentages, I would say probably 70-30 or 60-40. We're seeing a shift in who's coming to the theater. And I think primarily it's because they're realizing that there's stories being told that really are, that really matter to them now. And I'm just a bold person anyway. I'm bold. I'm unapologetic about what I want to do or what I feel like my path should be or what I should do. And I felt like there was just such a need for some of this type of effect in the community. And fortunately enough for me, I had 6 other people that thought the same thing. I was an actor in this community before I was anything. And I was tired. I was tired of being the maid. I was tired of being the secondary character. I was tired of standing there and listening to a lot of dialogue that was very downgrading to my culture, and we just got tired of that, and we wanted to tell stories that amplified the Black experience and showed just how resilient and beautiful and rich and there's so much involved in the experience of being a person of culture and color in this world, and we wanted to be able to share that. And I think that it was a bit underrated to start with, but I think people are now starting to see the value in it.
Yeah, and speaking of like work that you've done, or specifically work that involves, representing the Black experience, I saw, if I'm correct, that you had worked on a play called Facing Our Truth, a 10-minute playlist on Trayvon, race, and privilege. And I know that the play discusses the importance, the why certain issues are vital of racial inequality and systemic oppression. And as the director of the play, I wonder what was the difficulty in tackling such a deep and like what septic issues did you endure? Because I know that the story of Trayvon Martin was a story that really invoked a movement for Black people. And so like what pressure did you feel in representing that?
I think there's always pressure in telling those type of stories, because they're tough topics, difficult realizations to come out of it. And I was working with the students at Iowa State on that play. And some of the immediate things that were coming up, and granted, that was during a period of time that we were in the midst of pandemic, basically, all of the George Floyd stuff had happened too at the time. It was just it was a lot going on, the BLM movement was getting really huge at the time. There's just a lot going on. And the students were very sensitive to the dialogue and the almost because it was provocative to them. It was provoking them. I had one student that had to have say a racial connotation in the play in one of the vignettes, and he was just petrified to say the N-word. It was just very bothersome for him.
Yeah.
after a period of time, because he wasn't a Black person.
Mhm.
And he felt a way personally about using that language. Uh,
Mhm.
so there were, and then there was a lot of realizations with that cast, with what the experience was for them as individual students.
Mhm.
And Iowa State it's a PWI, it's a predominantly white college.
Yeah.
But I would say, especially in the performing arts department, they're very progressive when it comes to trying to embrace these stories that are like kind of give cross-cultural messaging, that kind of allow
Mhm.
us room to use controversial art sometimes.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed being able to do that. But the most of the issues that I face is because none of the issues that were found in those
Mhm.
vignettes were new,
Yeah.
issues that people hadn't seen. But what the biggest issues were,
Mhm.
empowering the students to have the freedom and liberty in order to share those stories without themselves feeling convicted by
Yeah.
what they were having to do and what they were having to say.
Mm. And then Daniel, since you're back, did you want to ask the question?
Yes. What advice would you give to younger people pursuing a career in film or theater? Or what advice would you want to give yourself, a younger version of yourself?
I think of the biggest piece of advice that I could give is use your soul, but don't sell it. Um, there's opportunities in this industry. There's opportunities in performing arts. There's opportunities in career, in life, for you to move away from what you're convicted by or what you find in your spiritual makeup, or who the person that you are. Life will ask you to compromise that a lot. Um, in order for you to be able to feel like you're moving forward, or feel like you're becoming successful. Life will oftentimes ask you to compromise what you feel inside, or ask you to go against it. And I would say, put your heart and soul in the stuff that you do, but never put it on the table for sale, if that makes sense.
I think that's
Yes,
a
it does.
great piece of advice. I also saw that in your 2018 interview with the Des Moines Register I had watched, published by Matt Heimer, you stated that pyramid lit a fire within you. Do you mind elaborating on this metaphorical fire? And then I ask, what inspired you to be a part of change and want to artistically create? I have a little picture since, sitting here and listening to you too. So.
Um, what I mean by the metaphoric fire is that it reignited my gift and purpose.
Mm,
It's easy when you are a Black woman that lives in a marginalized community to forget the essence of who you are, to forget that the culture in you that just lives in you, and that was ingrained in you, and that has been passed down through DNA in you, is viable, and that
mm,
it can be utilized, um, and that it can change things. Just you as an individual person, if you make a decision to do something, it can change things for people. Um, and when I directed my first show, which was A Raisin in the Sun,
mm-hmm,
um, I just felt I just felt like inside of me was incredibly just honored and grateful, and reinvigorated, and I felt somewhat like an activist, or a something like it really reignited my desire to be a part of the solution of the things that I
mm-hmm,
found in the world. It becomes so easy for you to become complacent and complicit, and just live your life and not
mm-hmm,
worry about everybody else's. But what we do have to understand is that we don't live in this world by ourselves. So it's one thing to have your own effect on your own self, and to work on your own disposition, but there is a responsibility that we have to the community of tomorrows that are not here yet.
Mm-hmm.
And for us to do our part today, to ensure that the communities of tomorrow have a better lived experience than what we have had.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what our legacy has done for us. That's what our ancestors have done for us to have some of the liberties that we have today. And I think that it's our responsibility to carry forward today so that we can get to a tomorrow that's better for us all and not just for us individually. And I think that that is the fire, metaphoric fire I'm talking about, is that
Mm-hmm.
a fire is once ignited, it spreads, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that that is what I meant by it lit a fire inside of me that has now become an inferno, because I literally now want to spread that as far and wide as I can while I'm here
Mm-hmm.
on this.
And I think that you've done so very beautifully. I actually, in to conclude, even though Daniel's not here,
It's been
you
having
know,
technical issues
a
today.
lot of technical difficulties. As someone who is majoring in theater and performance studies at U Chicago, I want to say that this interview has been very insightful for me, and I really sincerely thank you for your time. I think that a lot of times I haven't seen, like, especially like for me going to Roosevelt, although a very diverse school, I never saw other Black kids, explore the theater avenue or the acting avenue or whatever the case is. And I remember once, for a talent show, I was asked to, perform a monologue. And I thought it was the worst decision I could ever make because nobody understood. And it was just a bad experience. But I think that, truly hearing from you has been, like very, very insightful and also inspirational. And like a beacon of keep going. And so, yeah, I just wanted to thank you for that and for your time, sincerely.
Well, Elaf, I want you to keep going. I think
Thank
it's
you.
very important for you to do that.
Thank you.
Especially in the world that we live in today.
Mm-hmm.
Stories and performance, and it's a brave place and a brave thing to do in this day and age. I'll go back to Amen Corner and by James Baldwin and Sister
Mm-hmm.
Margaret. The very last thing she said in that play is to love God is to love all of his children, everyone, and to
Mm-hmm.
suffer with them, to rejoice with them, and never count the cost. And I think that is a really good
Yeah,
last quote to stand on, because it is so true. Loving other people is a direct reflection of how you love yourself, right?
absolutely.
Um, so any last words of advice is start there, loving yourself. Whitney Houston said it. Rest in peace, Whitney. In the greatest love of all, learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. And once you learn to love yourself, it's easy to love the people around you.
Absolutely. And Daniel, would you like to
Daniel, you have been
take the
popping
floor?
in today.
Little technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tiffany, for taking the time to speak to us. We really appreciate it. And the viewers, thank you for tuning in. Please
Thank
tune
you
in
all
next
so much
week
for having me.
for our 4th episode of our CEO Super Series. Have a great day.
And thank you for taking the time to talk to us again.
It's been my pleasure, you guys. Have a wonderful day.
You as